Hello everyone, welcome to BrickVault. Today we're taking a closer look at 4 different lightsabers, or lightsaber hilts. These custom LEGO builds were designed by Louis Meany. The 4 models include Ahsoka's Padawan lightsabers, Count Dooku's curved handle saber, the Darksaber, and from the recent game Jedi Fallen Order, Cal Kestis' saber. Too many S's close together. Before we jump into all the details for these 4 hilt models, first I want to say that if you think you'd like to build any of these for yourself, the instructions can be found at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. Included with each purchase are the PDF step-by-step building guides, a digital parts list for quickly uploading online all the pieces you'll need, and graphics for printing if you wanted to display the title cards on the stands. Buying instructions is an excellent way to help us here at the channel, as well as the amazingly talented designers we work with, like Louis. He's got a ton of other saber handle designs. It is kind of his thing, so if you'd like to see more, leave a comment below about which ones. Okay, let's go through these 4 models one by one, starting off with Ahsoka's Padawan sabers. She began with just one originally, her primary green-bladed saber, and later Anakin gave her a second, shorter saber with a yellow-green blade. These LEGO hilts aren't built with full glowy blade attachments in mind, but Louis did include some color-accurate trans dishes at the mouth of each handle. If you wanted them to be accurate to Season 7, you could change these pieces to trans blue if you like, but I prefer to keep them pretty classic. Speaking of classic, the original design for Ahsoka's sabers feel really old school. We've got some big buttons and a large activation switch with a simple smooth body and a single slit that goes down both sides of the frame. The flat, thin flag pieces were used well to illustrate this detail by the mouth. It looks a little bit like a rail guard, but feels a little bit too small to function in that way. And at the opposite end of her saber, she has what looks like a small pommel, though it too doesn't function in the classic way a pommel would. That look is achieved though through a simple combination of clips and dishes, and it rounds itself out pretty well for both handles. The Shoto Blade is styled similarly to her original, but it's simplified down stylistically. The base of the handle does not get wider. The switch and larger black button are gone. There's just a couple of small ones, and there's no thin railguard by the mouth. I am just going to say this once about lightsabers now so I don't sound like a broken record, but lots of the handles look like a pain to grip if you're actually fighting with them in real life, and these Ahsoka designs certainly fall into that lot. Frankly, I don't know how they aren't accidentally turning their blades on and off all the time when they're in the middle of a battle. Anyhow, that should be a testament to how accurately Louis builds these models, because they are pretty darn accurate to what they look like in universe. And now on to Count Dooku's lightsaber, who breaks the mold in a refreshing way. Also, let me just say this real quick so it's not floating around in the comments section. Yes, Jedi Dooku had a different saber before he became Darth Tyrannus, so technically this is Darth Tyrannus' saber, but I call him Dooku, you call him Dooku, we all call him Dooku, so let's move on to the model. The story of Count Dooku's saber is kind of awesome. You have to leave the inside of the Star Wars universe for a moment and get into the production of the Clone Wars movie. The late great actor Christopher Lee, who plays Dooku, was a good fencer, and at the time, and to this day, holds the record for having more sword fights in any movie than any other person. He requested his hilt have a good curved handle to match with his preferred fighting style, and smartly, the production agreed. This LEGO reproduction, in fact, only has 2 points of angular changes, one by the top and the bottom, but it captures the overall curve really well because it's actually kind of a subtle one. Aside from just the curved handle, it also has a true pommel, meaning it's a bit wider and heavier at the base and functions in a similar way to how a pommel actually would. And the activation switch is also left down there with any other buttons or bumps, making it far from your natural gripping point so they don't get in the way while during a fight. This was the first lightsaber designed by anybody who knew anything about sword fighting, at least in my opinion, and it totally shows. Towards the front of the model, the dark bluish gray plates indicate where there should should be fine, uniform, shallow cuts, and the dishes at the end capture the trumpet-like flair of the mouth pretty well. I feel as if the build quality really sort of speaks for themselves here, so I'm having fun just getting lost in the history of lightsabers, so hope you don't mind. And speaking of history, not only does the Darksaber have the longest known record in the Star Wars universe, but the fate of this weapon is still currently unfolding to this day in the show The Mandalorian. To make this very long story short, over 1,000 years ago, the saber was constructed by Tar Vizsla, the first and possibly only Mandalorian Jedi, and since has crossed many hands, often wielded by the most powerful ruler of Mandalore. It's both revered and feared, usually at the center of many pivotal power struggles. Its unique qualities stand out immediately. The long, dark, rectangular handle has nothing more than some uniform risen black lines that change directions about halfway down the grip. The only non-symmetrical part of this whole build is the single trapezoid plate at the bottom, and I really like how Lewis got those 4 ingots in light bluish gray to cleverly trick your eye into imagining the finer line detailing found on the original model. The railguard is attached simply and rests on the model solidly, and this is easily my favorite saber of the 4, due to it being the closest to pinpoint accuracy, and overall, at least in my opinion, it's got that undefinable feeling of just being cool. Also, this is like the strongest model overall, but we'll get to handling shortly. The final saber in the bunch is a very interesting one. This belongs to Cal Kestis from the recent game Jedi Fallen Order. Because it's a game, you can customize your saber like crazy, so we're looking at an earlier iteration of the blade that's basically the cleaned up version of the halved saber from his former master, Jaro Tapal. It looks to me like the mouth of the saber is loosely inspired by the look of Ahsoka Tano's. This time, the slit that goes down both sides does come all the way around, splitting the end into 2 clean curved plates, and that's where the similarities end. The opening for the blade is set deeper into the body of the hilt. Most of everything else is a fairly clean cylinder, and there are a couple of cuts built into the gray body, accentuated by some darker gray in the middle. My favorite bit here is though the grips really feeling and looking like actual grips. The tire pieces not only match well for accuracy's sake, but this is by far the most comfortable model to handle. Now, speaking of handling, let's talk about these models in their physical form. They're primarily meant for display purposes, but you don't need to feel uncomfortable when moving them around. I suggest holding this a little bit higher on the tire grip. It can bow if you grab it from lower down, and basically everything else on this hilt is solid like a rock. The same goes for the Darksaber. Nothing on this model has broken on us so far, and there are pieces that can move a little bit. The front tip of the guard can come forward, though it stays in place with lots of friction, and the 1x3 tiles on the front and back can tilt out of alignment as well when you handle it a lot. Dooku's saber has the obvious extremity in the front that can hook onto things, so you have been warned officially, and the top and bottom angles built into this grip have a great amount of friction, and you can hold the whole weight of the hilt from either end. The last thing to note here is the single stud connection for the 1x8 tile on either sides of the grip. It moves out of place more easily than anything else of these 4/5 models. Ahsoka's hilts are both decently solid. Once again, there is somewhat of an obvious bending feature to the tiny guards on the top of her main saber, and both of the round bits at the end can be taken off if you bump them into something. Seeing as, well, that's about it. Each of these hilts has their own stand, as you saw earlier. Ahsoka's stand is a little different, being able to hold both together as a pair, and also if you look closer, the top stand is set a little bit higher, and that helps accommodate for the shape of her larger hilt. The same goes for Cal's stand, which is the only one that really gets somewhat naturally locked into place due to its design. And then for the Darksaber and Count Dooku's stand, they are set at the same heights here because they don't really need to get altered. Also, if the prospect of printing something onto sticker paper is something that doesn't appeal to you, there is an option to skip that part and just keep the stands nameless like this. Wow, that was a lot to get through in a video like this. I guess I have come full circle though. If you did want to build any of these models for yourself. The instructions can be found at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. Saber hilts are an interesting part of the Star Wars universe. They are basically a physical template that show off traits of individual characters, and there's a unique kind of expression and creativity found in them that makes the hilts wholly their own. I feel like I should have put that part at the beginning of the video, but anyways, thank you for watching. If you enjoy our content, you can always like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, let Lewis know what you think about these builds, share the video, or do whatever you want to do. We'll see you next time at BrickVault.